Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We are here to do a follow-up to our episode on the Schumacher cut of Batman Forever. I just wanted to take the time and thank you guys so much. The interest in this cut of this movie has allowed us to have our hugest episode of all time by a massive margin, so I just wanted to thank everyone that listened to that episode. I'm Justin, I'm your host, and after this episode came out, a lot of talk, a lot of discussion, a lot of people commenting, and we actually had the guy reach out to us that is slightly responsible for this, and he's here on the show to talk about it. I'd like to welcome Joe Black.
Hi, nice to meet you officially, and
yeah,
glad to come on your show.
Yeah, really appreciate it. I think it was wild because, you know, I had a mutual friend reach out to me and mention you, and then a lot of people commented your name. In our last episode, ladies and gentlemen, you probably already listened to it. We didn't know who it was that was involved with the Schumacher cut in terms of it being screened and all of that stuff. So it was very quick that people were telling us, and you actually found our Facebook page and you commented, and I was really happy to connect with you and discuss this further because it's insane to me. I mean, I've been interested in this cut of this movie and been a part of the movement for about 3 or 4 years now, but since our episode dropped, it's been massive. I mean, the interest in this is huge. So again, I'm not going to try to pry too deep here with you or anything, but so how did you get involved, or what was your first entry into being connected to the Schumacher cut? Whatever you're available to say.
Yeah. Well, I think that we're probably around the same age here. Batman '89 was actually the first movie I ever saw in a theater.
Wow.
And I don't remember seeing it, but I do remember seeing Batman Returns. But Batman Forever was the first one where I was like cognizant enough for it to be like a thing for a long time. You know what I mean? Like cutting out the cereal box characters and like, collecting the toys.
Same thing.
The Kellogg's Pops with Val Kilmer on it, and then recording the commercials every time they'd come on TV. I'd record it on our tapes, just beyond excited to see this movie. And I remember convincing myself. I remember it was the first movie that I convinced myself that I liked, because I didn't really, but like I needed to like it. So I watched it, and listening to your podcast, it's kind of funny because like I think we have a very similar connection to the movie in a way that like you were quoting it so perfectly, even like rhymically. Like that's how ingrained this movie is in you and in me, you know what I mean? And like you, a few years ago, I heard about this infamous Schumacher cut. And that got me really jazzed because I'm a filmmaker. I live in Los Angeles. I'm a filmmaker, and Joel Schumacher is actually like one of my absolute top filmmakers. And you go back and you look at his work that was like leading up to that. You look at things like St. Elmo's Fire and The Lost Boys and Flatliners and Falling Down. All those actually seem like an interesting trajectory to make a Batman movie.
Definitely.
Like you could see why they're like, who needs to follow Tim Burton, the guy who made Flatliners? Like that actually makes a lot of sense. But then you see Batman Forever, and it's so like goofy. It's like oddly goofy, but like it still has that Schumacher like eroticism to it, and that, you know what I mean? Like
100%. Yeah. As a kid, I didn't notice it, but as an adult, it's very clear.
Yeah, but I mean, like even his color palette is like an erotic color palette. It's pretty cool. Like he was a genius, R.I.P. But getting older and seeing Schumacher's work and understanding it better and stuff, I kind of started to understand why I didn't care for Batman Forever and why I did like Batman and Robin, which I still do.
That's a bombshell right there. That's a bombshell.
Well. But Batman Forever is, you can tell it was fucked with. you can tell that somebody made one movie and the studio said, no, 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 guys, come on. Like, you know what I mean? Like, throw in the laundry, like we need to reel this in because we need to sell toys. And then what I like about Batman and Robin is that you can tell that the people who made it went into it saying, okay, so they just want a toy movie, so like they just purely, like sold into that, like, goofy 60s aesthetic, and it's consistent and fun. And I think it works
I do
because
agree with that.
it wasn't.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's why I love Batman and Robin. And I mean, much like you just said, when I saw it opening night at the age of 14, I didn't feel that way. But as I got older, an adult, and I would keep watching it over and over again, I don't use the word guilty pleasure because I don't believe in it. I don't think anyone should ever feel
I
guilty for
agree.
liking something or loving something. So I just like it and love it and enjoy watching it. And I agree with you 100%. It's unapologetic in terms of how it's broad it is, and just, I mean, it is what it is. It's the purest form of what that type of movie should be.
Right, exactly. And you either dig it or you don't. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And they actually just that's the kind of thing that bums me out about how people talk about Batman Forever, is that like, or Batman and Robin, is that like, no, it's not a bad movie. They didn't fuck up. They didn't make a mistake. No, it's just you're not into it. There are some movies where they just like did not do their job. This one they did their job, and you just don't dig it. Like that's a totally different
That's
story. And I
some
like what you
truth
said
right
about.
there. That's some truth right there, I gotta say.
Yeah, well, and I like what you said about guilty pleasure, because whenever anybody tells me that something is a guilty pleasure to them, all that tells me is that they're afraid of who they are in the context of society. Which, it's like, don't be afraid of who you are. Like be yourself, and people will be okay with it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
like as long as you understand why. So like, when I, in front of Kevin's audience, mentioned I like Batman and Robin more than, Batman Forever, they like freaked out, but it's like that's not gonna hurt my feelings,
Of
because
course.
like having a conversation with you, even in the 10 minutes that you and I have been talking or whatever, like we can create context, and I think you can tell that like I'm not coming at it from anything other than the truth of myself. So anyways, yeah, I like that you said that about guilty pleasure. Sorry, I went off on a tangent. I just really
No,
like
it's
that you
okay.
said that, because
That's been
yeah.
one of my monikers for a long time. That, and my main moniker is film is subjective, and I interject that any opportunity that I get, and that also applies to what you're referring to right now with Batman and Robin and Batman Forever. So
Right. Right. Yeah. And I think that, like, speaking to subjectivity versus objectivity, I think that when people speak of film objectively, they use the word rules, when really I think that the only objective truth about filmmaking is that there are tools that you can use to filmmaking. Like you can say objectively that like voiceover is a tool. You know what I mean? But like
yeah.
it's not a rule on how to do so, or a close up, or you can create whatever context you want. So I dig where you're coming from. That's excellent. So I heard about the Schumacher cut. I was like, oh, that's dope. And then Schumacher dies, and I was like, that's not dope. That really sucks. Because I think, was Trespass his last movie, the Nicole
Uh,
Kidman Nick Cage movie.
I think it was,
Um,
actually, if I remember correctly. I don't have it in front of me, but if I remember correctly, that was his last movie. Yeah.
it's good. It's good. Like it's one of those ones that like I could see people like discovering in this Nick Cage renaissance and going, oh, we slept on this one. This one's pretty good. He never really lost it. You know what I mean? Like even in his 70s, like some filmmakers do. But when he died, it's like, okay, so that's not happening. The Schumacher cut that we're starting to hear bubbles about.
Yeah.
And then Snyder happens, and you know, I I gotta say, I personally, like, I did not care for the Snyder cut. I was very excited about it. I don't know how you feel. I'd like to ask you, if you don't mind, how you feel about Batman versus Superman.
Well, I actually initially really, really enjoyed it. And part of that was it took a big swing and it went for it, and it wasn't going to be for everybody. But I like dark nihilistic movies, and I was like, well, you know what? The way that I view all these movies is there's always going to be something for everyone. Someone's always going to make another one, and it's going to be another flavor. And before this, there was all these other flavors. So I was like, this one worked for me, and then I really enjoyed the ultimate edition of that movie, and then I really like passionately loved the Snyder cut of Justice League. I mean, after watching the Joss Whedon version, I mean, I remember posting like that I thought it was okay because I was trying to be easy on myself, much like you said earlier about convincing yourself that you enjoyed Batman Forever.
Mm-hmm.
It was more or less like me trying to be like, it wasn't that bad, but it really was. But I'm trying to convince myself. But when I saw the Snyder cut, I loved it. It's one of my favorite comic book movies, probably top 20. But what that showed is that a movement of fans can actually, you know, predict or force a studio to make something that they want. It was the first time I think in history where, you know, billboards that fans were paying for, you know, to represent what they want to see, were up, and people were just passionate about this thing, and it happened. And Warner Brothers gave however many millions of dollars to Zack Snyder to finish the movie he envisioned, and it came out, and it did really well in terms of streaming and all that stuff. But yes, so I've been a Snyder fan since Man of Steel. Well, prior to that, Dawn of the Dead and stuff. But I think the Snyder cultists right now are slowly ruining things for fans everywhere. So it was cool to have that high of all of that, but now it's like, you know, I won't even get into all that stuff. But yes, so that's how I feel about those movies.
This all ties into what you just said. I actually think that Batman Begins was the death of the summer blockbuster. I think that that's when I think that that's when summer blockbusters became information versus emotion. Like if you notice the way that Christopher Nolan shoots that movie, I'm not a fan of Christopher Nolan. I'll just preface that. I don't care for his work because to me, film is an emotional connection, and Nolan doesn't cut for emotion. Nolan or shoot for emotion. He shoots and cuts for information. You know the scene, I'm sure you're familiar with Batman Begins, the scene where Ducard is sliding down the mountain unconscious, and Batman like jumps after him and fucking like
yeah, he uses the gauntlet, he slams it into ice and then
dangles off this.
Yeah.
If you watch that sequence, the way that it's shot and cut, every single shot gives you a new piece of geographical information. Like that's how the scene is cut together. Like there's no shot in that sequence that actually is about what Bruce is feeling in that moment. You don't feel Bruce's anxiety. You don't feel the suspense of it. It's just about the rhythm of the spatial relation between the two, because Nolan makes a movie assuming that you inherently understand what you're supposed to be feeling right now. Like that's how he makes movies. And again, I don't want to call that a criticism. I think that's crap. I think that that's terrible. And I think that Batman Begins is actually the movie that killed the summer blockbuster. But I think that The Dark Knight was an improvement, though not much of one, in the negatives. Like I think that the script is better for Dark Knight, and Heath Ledger is just, you know, undeniably great in it.
Of course. Yeah.
But I do think that movie peaks about 40 minutes before it ends. And notice that they steal the ending of Batman Forever for that movie, where in The Dark Knight, Batman literally gets his suit with sonar modification to find the Joker in his hideout lair that is, and he's making him choose between two sides that are going to destroy.
Yeah.
I mean, he just steals the Batman Forever ending. And I remember watching that on opening night and going like, is he really like trying to do a second pass at the Batman Forever finale? But it was better. But then The Dark Knight Rises, I loved, because it was so goofy. It was so like dopey in a good way. It was so theatrical.
On the mask.
Oh my god! The summer that came out, I was making a movie called Yellow Bellies, and I took the cast and crew. We paid for all of them to go see it the day that it came out. My brother and I had seen it a few weeks beforehand, but we all went and saw it the day it came out. And I could not stop doing that the whole time. Perhaps he's wondering why someone would shoot a man before throwing him out of a plane. Yeah, no one cared who I was till I put on the mask. I used to. Yeah, I was directing like that. Give it back to you, the people. I thought Bane was brilliant. I thought that, and I'm sorry, but you throw Matthew Modine in a movie and you got me. Like
Oh, for
he's like a
sure.
cheat code.
For sure.
He's
Yeah.
he and I share a birthday. He's my birthday buddy. Um, but yeah, it because it wasn't trying to be anything other than this big like cartoonish thing. I thought it worked really well. I really love that. And me and my buddies, when Batman Begins came out, we used to make fun of when he gets gassed in the face and he's in the back of the taxi and he's just going person. We used to make fun of that all the time. And I was so disappointed that there wasn't anything like that in The Dark Knight. But in The Dark Knight Rises, when Miranda stabs him, he's doing that again. And me and my buddies, we all like cheered. He's doing the we were like, yes, it's back. Like, but anyway, so I'm coming off of, when I see Batman versus Superman, I'm coming off of a decade of Batman that I could care less about. And then Man of Steel, I walk out of movies all the time. Like I don't have time for it. You know what I mean? Like I just walked out of one the other day. I walked out of No Hard Feelings. Like I walk out of movies all the time. Man of Steel was the hardest movie to get through that I've ever sat through for me.
That's
And
interesting.
I went with 3 other buddies, and one of them left like 10 minutes into the movie. The other one had to leave about an hour to go to work. And I was like, I'm gonna see this through. I'm gonna, I was watching it at ArcLight in the Dome, in the Cinerama Dome in 3D on opening day, And I turned to my remaining buddy at the end. And I'm like, dude, that was horrible. And he straight up was just like he's passed out asleep.
Man, I feel like we couldn't be more opposite on that movie.
Which is great. Like that,
Yeah.
like you said, I mean, that's kind of the point. You know what I mean? Like
Sure,
that's the point of all of it. So when they announced after that Ben Affleck was going to be playing Batman, I told people that must have been what Jesse Jackson felt like on the day that Barack Obama won the presidency, where it's like, oh my God, I thought that I would never live to see this day. Oh, but he's half white. For me, it was like, oh, I never thought that I'd live to see this day, but it's being directed by Zack Snyder. And because Ben Affleck's my favorite actor. And
okay.
so I got invited to an early screening of Batman versus Superman on the Warner Brothers lot. And this is about a month or two before it actually came out. And there was only like 60 of us in there. And we were blown away. Like, I'm talking like on our feet cheering, just like mad for this movie. I was flabbergasted. I was like, Snyder's been leading up to this his whole career. I think the Batman versus Superman is one of the most important movies of the 21st century. Like, I think it's.
I got to admit, I wasn't expecting you to go there with that, but this is pretty impressive.
Well, and the things that he does in that movie that are so like everybody talks about the Martha moment, and I just, it blows my mind that people are missing so many complex like sides to that moment where like it's not just like, oh, our moms have the same name, we're friends. That's such a stupid, reductive Disney propaganda, hive mind mentality. Like it's that moment. I noticed when we're watching the origin at the beginning, his father, I noticed 2 things, or 3 things rather, that were different. One, there's a poster that says Excalibur coming soon as they're walking out of the right
the theater.
2, yeah, you see later that Zora's on the thing, but like the first thing I clocked when I was watching was like, Excalibur, what? Because that's Zack Snyder's favorite movie. Fuck off. And then his dad, if you notice in this one, in all the other origins, it's always like either somebody scares the attacker and he kills them, or Thomas Wayne tries to interfere with him hurting Martha, right? In this, they specifically stage it to where the robbery's going fine. Like, there's an exchange of goods, whatever. And then Bruce watches his dad ball up his fist and take a wild swing at the guy, right? And that's what gets everyone killed. And then the third thing I notice is that he doesn't give Bruce some parting wisdom or anything like that, like he does in the Nolan version or anything. His last thing he said is Martha. And I was like, whoa, like that's interesting. There's something going on here. And so when the Martha moment comes back in the movie, it's right after Ben Affleck goes to finally hunt Superman, and Ben Affleck's character is like, he's on the, if there's a 1% chance, we have to take it as an absolute certainty. He says, I'm older now than my father ever was. We were born hunters. You know, he's got this mentality that he's building up. He's about to fucking kill Superman, which that fight I loved so much. That little like robo fist thing he was doing, so good.
Oh, it's fantastic.
He's about to kill. Oh, it's amazing. He's about to kill him, and he says Martha, and Batman's like freaking out, like, why the fuck did you say that name? And what's hitting him in that moment, there's so many layers to it. One, yes, them sharing the common name helps him relate to Superman in that way, but also that Superman in his dying moment is thinking of somebody else, right? And specifically to protect somebody else. Also, that Superman in that moment is talking about a human woman, right? So Superman identifies himself in that way as putting humanity before himself to Bruce, which is super important, right?
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Then the fact that he says Martha, that was Thomas Wayne's last words. And why did Thomas Wayne say it? He said it because his impulsive, like his impulsive hunter protector nature killed his wife. That's what got his wife killed in that attack, is him taking the swing at the guy when he didn't need to, right? He was just impulsive and aggressive and the male dominant guy. And so he does that, and fucking Martha, he ruined everything because of it. And that's hitting Bruce Wayne in that moment. That, oh my God, I've become my father. And I'm about to let my like wild impulse hunter, like, you know, dominant thing get in the way. And by doing so, I could be actually destroying the world. Just like my father did. That moment,
I've never heard anyone. I've never heard anyone analyze those two pieces of the movie together and connect those two in such a way that you just did, which is insane.
Well, see, when I would say that to people, they would tell me I'm like looking too deep into it. I'm known for that, apparently, with my friends. I'm like, no, and I have proof of them that they were thinking this way when they wrote it. How does Superman die in the movie?
Doomsday kills him.
How does Doomsday kill him?
Doesn't he like shove a stake through him or something, or shoves him on a fucking?
He spears him.
Spears him.
Superman has the spear. Where did the spear come from in this? Lois goes and gets it from the water, right?
That's right.
It's in the water, right? So he takes the spear. He's going to kill Doomsday. Doomsday stabs him. He pulls himself down Doomsday's spear and kills Doomsday. And what is Doomsday? Doomsday is the last son of Krypton, right? Like at this point, like because he was created by whatever. What movie does it say is coming on the poster at the beginning of Batman versus Superman? What does it say coming soon? Excalibur.
Oh.
How does Arthur die in Excalibur? I'll tell you, fighting off his evil warlord child that was birthed from magic, his fucking evil sister, and he gets the sword from the lady in the lake, and he goes to stab his son. His son stabs him with a spear, and Arthur pulls himself down the spear and stabs his son, just like Superman does with Doomsday. Snyder, for like the first time, is actually creating these thematic circles. Like he's setting us up from the beginning for this is like the end. And I was like, oh my God, this is like so next level for comic book movies. This is so next level for Zack Snyder, who I do not care for his work, like outside of that movie, kind of at all. I sort of like 300, who didn't? You know what I mean?
I know, right? Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. But it like floored me, right? Like the movie just like moved me. And then it came out and everybody hated it, and I was so bummed. And then he releases that ultimate cut. Now this is where I promise I'm getting to. I hope this is fine. That this is getting to the.
Oh, of course, yeah, of course. I mean,
okay, cool.
Most of our listeners, I mean, that have been with us for a long time, know that we were champions of these movies and have discussed them to no end over the years. So yeah, feel free.
Okay. Well, I'm new to the scene. I was sad when it came out and people just dogged on it and hated it. And I think part of that is that there's like a cultural hive mind, and that I also have seen enough of the inner workings of Hollywood to know how they plant like social ideas in what not to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but it is all like, oh, you're not going to upstage Marvel. No, fuck you. We've got, Endgame coming out in a couple of years. But anyways, the ultimate cut comes out, and this is like a new thing. Like the only other movie I could think of that had a release similar was Anchorman 2. Like if you remember Anchorman 2, they released an R-rated cut after
Oh,
the
that's
first one
right.
didn't do so hot. They
Yeah.
released an R-rated cut, and which I liked that cut, and I also liked the unrated cut that they released. I liked all three cuts of Anchorman too. But when they released this Dawn of this Dawn of Justice Ultimate Edition, and people were responding that they really liked it, and I was like, oh well, I got to see this then. Like finally people are on board with this movie that I've been digging for a couple of years now. I go to see it, and I'm like, all the new stuff, I'm like, yeah, I know. Like, what, you didn't know that was happening? Like, they had to tell you that this is what was going on? Like, and I actually didn't care for the ultimate cut because I was like, yeah, all
Oh,
that's
wow.
superfluous. But again, it's because I like to ride the wave more of like an emotional like through line of a movie. And I think that we at that point we're 13 years into the information conditioning, like the information filmmaking style of it. And so I guess people needed that. But at the end of the day, I was just happy that finally I could talk about Batman versus Superman, and the conversation was not immediately like crap, like it was. They're like, oh, but I like the R-rated cut. Anyways, so when Justice League was coming out and all that riffraff was happening, I had, by the time I sat down in the theater to watch it, I had accepted that this was not going to be the follow-up to Batman versus Superman. Like, I was like, you know what, this is just going to be all these dudes teaming up, and Wonder Woman, and like, just let it be whatever it is. Like, I wash my hands of it. I absolutely hated Wonder Woman. I thought that was terrible. And had Aquaman come out at that point? I can't remember. I don't think it had.
Not yet, no.
No, Aquaman came out 2 years later. That sucks.
That's right.
But anyways, so I go to see this movie, and something again, almost like The Dark Knight Rises, where the tone of the beginning with like Batman catching that guy on the roof and like all that, I was like, okay, so this is like a kid's movie. This is like, you know what I mean? Like we're in like kid movie territory. And at the end, I was like, that was good. I for a kids movie, like, if you're 10 years old and you go to see that movie, it's going to be your favorite.
Yeah, you're gonna be excited about that if you're a kid, for sure. Yeah.
Right. And I thought actually that like the end, Lois gives like a little speech at the end that I thought was like amazing. Like when she's writing her article, she says, and I think I can remember verbatim, she says, darkness, true darkness, is not the absence of light, but the conviction that the light will never return. And I remember thinking like, whoa, like that's fucking heavy. Like that's like a real thing. You know what I mean? Like that,
Yeah.
like, because I think that the difference that points out in how people view what darkness is, or depression or tragedy, that difference is so important. And to make that distinction, I was like, and especially to make that distinction in a movie that's meant to communicate to 10-year-olds, that's amazing to me. Like that to me is true Hollywood filmmaking. Like I loved that. I thought that was great. Hear about the Snyder Cut, and like everyone else on the planet, I got excited because I loved Batman versus Superman so much. And by the time it was finally coming out, I was in the middle of shooting my film Natasha Hall, and we'd been shooting all day since like 6 a.m. on the day that the Snyder Cut came out. And at the end of a 14-hour day that started at 6 a.m., we dropped my projector, and and I hated it.
Whoa.
I thought it was so, yeah, I thought, because it felt like, to me, the closest movie it reminded me of was Batman Forever, but in that it was like, this is not as smart as it thinks it is. This doesn't have as much to say as the other ones do. And it is kind of just the same scene over and over again. Now, there were things that I really liked in it. I loved when Batman raids the bad guys thing at the end. Like that Batman action sequence is like some of the best Batman I've ever seen.
It's fantastic,
Like,
definitely.
yeah. And again, there are, of course, things in it that are great, undeniably so. Like, Zack Snyder's not a terrible filmmaker. I just don't think he's terribly interesting. But he's a good filmmaker, but overall, I just didn't care for it. And I especially didn't care for the color grade, and I especially did not care for the aspect ratio, which he tries to sell it as like, we did that for IMAX, blah, blah. It's like, no, you didn't. You did that because it would be cheaper to do the effects. If you're missing half of your anamorphic frame, you only have to do effects for this much space. Like,
that makes total sense.
But but I went to go. I chucked it up to. I'm in the middle of making this movie. I'm about to get married in a couple weeks. I've been shooting since 6 a.m. You know, maybe I'm the jerk, right? So I waited until all the dust had settled for my life and whatever, and I got to see it again. And I watched it in a theater. My buddies and I stayed
You're
after
fucking
hours in the
lucky,
theater.
man.
Like,
You're fucking lucky.
yes, well, like I wanted to, you know what I mean, give it like its proper due. You know what I mean? I don't want to say what theater, but if I told you, you would be very jealous of what theater I got to see it in. Um, but anyways, um, so but again, when it was done, I did not care for it. I didn't hate it as much as I did the first time, but I did say that I think it's missing the three best things from the Whedon cut. One being that brilliant Lois Lane bit that I talked about at the end. Two, it doesn't have the scene of Bruce and Wonder Woman where she sees his bruises and she sees his scars, and they have that discussion of like, why does he feel the need to not only do this but to lead? You know, given that he's, you know, not like them. You know what I mean? Like, I thought that scene was great. And then there's another bit missing where Cyborg, when he's talking to Joe Morton, his dad at the beginning, he says, he's like, Joe Morton's like, go outside, like, live your life or something like that. And Cyborg in the Whedon cut says, I don't want them to see the monster or something like that. And Joe Morton's like, oh, son, you're not a monster. And Cyborg looks up at his dad and goes, funny you thought I was talking about me. You know, like, and I remember like in the theater being like, woo, take that, Joe Morton. That's not in the Snyder cut. And, you know, those elements are very interesting and very, so I wrote off the Snyder cut, and I get that, like, I'm glad that fans got what they wanted, especially because at the end of the day, it's just a fucking comic book movie, quote unquote. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like,
yes.
So like let the comic book fans get what they want. Like, I do feel like in that whole discussion that Scorsese was trying to like articulate, but did poorly, the cinema versus whatever this other thing is, you know what I mean? Like, whatever this other thing is not a lesser than cinema by any stretch. You know what I mean? It's like it by his definition. So like, let the people who that's what they want out of movies, let them have a say, I suppose. You know what I mean? And like you said, they rallied behind it enough to pay out of pocket to buy billboards and shit. All right, like, that's yours then. That's not for me. You know, like, I'm a casual Batman movie fan. Like, you know what I mean? I have the Batman 89 tattoo on my arm, mostly because that's the first Batman movie I ever saw. You know what I mean?
Need a little more
like,
gore under the fangs, though, Ed. What a dick.
Well, you know, it's really funny. Nobody, you know, it's funny. I never noticed this before in my life until I got this tattoo. I was walking and somebody saw it, just some random stranger, and he goes, "Oh, I get it, bat suit." And I was like, "Oh." Like, I've been looking at this for 33 years and I've never, like, that's brilliant. Like, that's hilarious. It is. It's a bat in a suit. Brilliant. Anyways, but that tattoo I have because of Batman being the first movie I ever saw. And I do love it. You know what I mean? But like, when it comes to Batman, I'm not a comic book guy. I'm a fan of Batman movies, you know, and the Adam West Show and whatever. So Schumacher dies. The Snyder Cut is a thing of myth. And then the Robert Pattinson Batman is getting made, and oh my god, like, if I thought Batman Begins was the worst possible Batman movie we were ever going to get, the Batman to me was like, that was like getting a root canal. Like, I hated that movie. I don't know how you felt about that one.
I loved it.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be a jerk about it.
No. Listen.
Yeah.
My OG co-host, he and I were like split down the middle on, it was so fun. I miss doing the show with him. We were split down the middle on so many titles, and that was the excitement of it, because I wanted to debate and argue, but in a fashionable way, if that makes any sense. But I rarely get that kind of pushback these days, so I do miss it. But no, I mean, you know, over the years and being in this community in terms of, you know, film Twitter, or, you know, being a movie critic or whatever, I'm just used to it now. Like, no matter what you say, there's always going to be someone else that says the exact opposite, and it no longer bothers me. You know, it's not hurtful
the whole point,
to me.
though. Right. The one rule that I live by, especially if you have an opinion that is like that's a huge contrast to a consensus, is that as long as you have a reason to express it and you understand why you're saying it,
yeah,
then like, let's hear it. You know, and like, that movie, I mean, first of all, I think Paul Dano should have been excommunicated from Hollywood for how bad he was in that movie. I thought that he was like,
God.
they actually did they did a double feature at the Arrow Theater here in Los Angeles. They did a double feature of the Batman and the Fablemans with a Q&A with Paul Dano in the middle. And I was like, that must be what biblical hell is like. Like, is 7 hours of Paul Dano, you know what I mean? Like, and you're just stuck in the Arrow Theater of all places listening to this guy. But and Batman, when he, tell me how you feel about this, at least. I just got to know, because I don't want to be a bummer, but when Alfred opens the package, boom, explodes. I'm in the hospital. I wake up. I see Batman. The first thing I do is smile at him. The first words out of his mouth are, "You lied to me."
Yeah, no, very true.
I'm just like, what? I'm like, what the fuck is this guy's problem? Like I took a fucking bomb, not even for you. I took a bomb because of you. And you're giving me shit? Like, go to hell. Like,
that's very true. Yeah.
And I also saw that in the exact same theater that I had, to the day 1 week before, seen the 50th anniversary Godfather re-release. And like, that movie is like just incredible, and the acting in that is just like so amazing. And then I was reading all these reviews about the Batman and how good the acting was, and I was like, oh, I'm very excited. I like a lot of these actors, save for Paul Dano and Zoe Kravitz. I like everyone else. I go to see it, and I'm like, you guys think this is good acting? Can I show you The Godfather? May I show you this movie? Like, to like kind of like, it just had an uphill battle. But I was totally checked out. I was totally bumming on it, and I was talking about it with a certain person, and that certain person was like, well, what do you think of this Schumacher cut business? And I was like, well, dry land is a myth. I don't, like what? And they're like, do you want to watch it? And yes, so we dropped the projector, like invite a couple friends over, and I can say this, that we talked about this beforehand before we would start recording. I hesitate to say like exactly like how I can verify this, but I just want to say that this cut is, without giving any details about how I can verify this, just know that it is verifiable. This is 100% Joel Schumacher's cut of the film. 100%.
Wow.
I'm just gonna have to like ask that people trust me when I say that, which, if you can't, I don't blame you. But like, I've already told you how much I like Batman and Robin in The Dark Knight Rises. So like, what do I have to lie?
You seem like a pretty honest guy at this point, so I don't see why you would lie or bullshit about that.
Right. So it is as close to what people have described as the Schumacher cut that has ever existed. Right? Is this version. And I sat there, and I brought my wife as one of the people to come watch it, and she had never seen Batman Forever. I showed her the first two Batman, the Tim Burton Batman movies, during lockdown, and she was all right with the first one, but she loved Batman Returns. She loved, or she calls it the Catwoman movie, because she can never remember the name of it. But me personally, just so you know, the first Tim Burton is actually my favorite.
I mean,
Batman
if you look at, you can see around my room,
yeah,
how much vintage shit I have. I mean, I've got this. I've got a huge leg sleeve of Keaton and Nicholson. I mean, it's my favorite movie of all time. So yeah.
And honestly, as an adult, even like, there are some movies that like have that place because of the time and place, or because of the significance to your life or whatever. But then there's some movies that you watch like that where you're like, no, if I saw this for the first time at 35 years old, this would change my life, And I think especially in the context of 1989, I think the first Batman, that's my favorite. And then Batman versus Superman is right next to it.
Right next to it, yeah.
Oh yeah, and then Returns, and then probably Rises, and then wherever from there. Like the rest of them, just throw them up in the air and see where they land, I guess. But
right.
Batman and Robin too, I enjoy. But anyways, So I brought her with me, and she brought one of her friends, and we're watching the movie. We're all watching the movie. There's about 7 or 8 of us watching it, and because I'm as familiar with it as you are, you know what I mean? I'm noticing every difference. And all my buddies, we're all of the same age, we're all of the same familiarity. We're all like freaking out, like at every little thing. We're like, oh my God, I'm like, he doesn't sound like that in the final cut. And like that line was dubbed, or like that line's missing, you know, everything. And my poor wife is just like, I'm trying to watch a movie here, guys. like I'm trying to just,
Poor
like,
thing.
you know. Yeah, I know. I feel so bad. I took Batman Forever away from her. But but it blew me away. I was sitting there watching it, and I was as now more of a Joel Schumacher fan than a Batman fan at this point in my life. I was like, oh my God, this is the successor to Lost Boys, Flatliners, Falling Down. You know what I mean? Like, this is the progression. You know, this is where you land. And it was just breaking my heart that it became what it became. Not even that what it became was so terrible, but just that, like, this is so pure and wonderful. And then Act 3 happens, and I was like, okay, so like he fluffed that too. So like it's not just the theatrical cut where that doesn't work. Because to me, everything from when Robin comes down those stairs in his new suit, like none of that works for me in either cut. Like I just think that it's like Robin does nothing. He gets captured twice. The bat boat blows up. I mean, like, what the fuck does this idiot do? And then like the bat wing, like both the vehicles, like the coolest thing they do with the vehicles is Batman flies through a cloud and Robin flies out of a tube.
Frogman
Like,
fuck him up. I mean, I guess it could be chalked up to like he's still fresh. I don't know. But all this
I
is
don't
doing,
disagree with that.
all this is doing is making Batman work harder. He has his rescue. He's like, you're supposed to be here helping, and I have to rescue you again. I could have just came by myself and rescued Chase, and everything would have been fine.
And the main reason I have to rescue you is because you fucking ran away on top of the thing when it was raising, when I didn't, like an asshole. Like I hate what they do. And before that, he's helpful. He throws the bomb into the fucking river and saves the circus, and then like he pulls Batman out of the dirt. You know, that's good. Those are good things to do. And then, but here's the thing: I think I would be on the side of no, you're not my partner, because I remember that time when you were trying to punch me in the alleyway, and it was so pathetic that I just let you do it for a full minute until you got sleepy. Because when he's punching Batman in that little like Dayglow alleyway, he's just like hitting him, and Batman's like, "Okay, you're getting tired."
It's like, bro, if you can't even hit me a couple times where it's actually going to make impact, how the fuck are you going to take on all the villains that I beat up every single night?
Exactly. How do you think that you're going to defeat Agent K? Like, how do you, Tommy Lee Jones? Like, how are you going to do it? Yeah, no, that's stupid. And then like the whole like the floor being the hologram and stuff. Like, I've always just been like, it didn't seem that hard for him to say both of them. Like,
not at all.
You know what I mean? Yeah, and yeah, so just like all of the above, I've always, even as a kid, felt like that last 20-30 minutes is just kind of a wash. And I was kind of bummed to see that the Schumacher cut didn't have any other tricks up its sleeve, although there is the one shot where Batman like figures out that it's a hologram floor. And I liked that. That in the Schumacher cut, I liked that, because I've always been like, how did he know to jump? I don't know. There's something like,
well, yeah, because in the Schumacher cut, you can see him. He's like looking down at the floor a bunch, like he's looking at it. He's, you know what I mean, like where in the theatrical cut, he doesn't look down at all. He just like jumps.
Right. So in the Schumacher cut, like when he does it in the theatrical cut, he throws the little battering,
the sonar battering,
and then the hologram. So why do you need a sonar battering to throw it at the giant fucking chandelier? But anyways, the floor disappears, right? So that's how he knows to jump, I guess. But how did he know that was going to happen? Well, now the Schumacher cut tells us, he's like, oh, I've seen past his illusion already. You know what I mean? So like Batman knows that he can do this now. So like that makes a little more sense. But then you get to the Two-Face bit in that third act, and him dangling from the pipe as all the coins are falling is a little too long in the Schumacher cut.
Definitely too long. Also, how the
Yeah,
fuck did
there's
he
a
get
shot
down there?
that's never bothered me. I mean, like Batman got down there pretty fast too. Um, but and there is like a time cut, like for where they're like, I don't know, that doesn't bother me so much. But in the theatrical cut, he falls into the thingy, into the pit, and the coin lands, and then it
In his
cuts to
hand.
Robin.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it cuts to Robin, and you give Robin that close up of like, it's done. You know what I mean? He gets some closure there. It's a nice moment, and then that leads into Riddler on the ground, all fucked up. You know, why can't I kill you? You
And then
know,
we
and
see
then
the
you get
giant bat and all that
yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
too many questions, too many questions. Yeah, it's a great moment, and I was blown away that the Schumacher cut did not have that in it. Like, it didn't have that scene
It
or
is.
the shot of
It's
Robin.
interesting. It's very abrupt the way it cuts directly from Two-Face dying, and then there's no confrontation at all whatsoever with Batman and the Riddler. I don't know if that. I mean, you know more about this cut than I do, but I would have thought like you would have needed that. Like every single one of these movies, you know, Batman has his final confrontation with the main villain, and then that's it. You know, but there is not one
Yeah.
here.
Look, even a broken clock is right twice a day. You know what I mean? Like, and so like the studio, you know, they went back, asked for these reshoots, asked for these redubs, because we'll get into that. Because to me, the biggest change in the movie is Sonic, is the audible element of it. But you know, these guys have done it a million times, these studio guys, and you know, if that was a reshoot, which I kind of get the feeling that it was, you know, given like that this was like, that's a good note. Like, no, we need, you know, a final beat for Robin and a final, and making a movie. Which are you a filmmaker? Are you a do you make films or?
I've been in some movies, but I'm not a filmmaker. No, I have a
Okay,
script for I have a
well,
script for a movie called Geese that hopefully will see the light of day someday. My buddy Loisos, who was on the show with me last week, he'll be directing if it ever happens. It's the first time I've ever
cool.
mentioned it on the show.
Geese.
Geese, just when you thought it was safe to go back to the pond.
That's funny. Is that really a tagline?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
I love it. You've got me. That's good stuff. I'll put you in touch with some people. So no, you know, the studio knows what they're doing, like to an extent, and that's a good note. And making a movie, especially one that big, like there's so many pieces that like I hate how the media and YouTube especially, like everybody like thinks that they know how the industry is run. They think that they know what these little things mean about a production. Reshoots are a good thing. And
yeah,
every filmmaker is grateful for them. Every filmmaker is grateful for them, truly, because every movie has reshoots, whether it's the $250 million Batman movie or if it's the, you know, $25,000 indie movie. Every movie has reshoots. So like, you know, it's part of the process, and for good reason, because once you finally get the whole thing slapped together, which this cut is a cut above that. Like, I know you guys talked about it on the thing, that it felt a little like there's some fat that needed to be trimmed, and that like this felt like almost like an assembly cut. I can tell you that this was not the assembly cut. I confirmed that. This is not the assembly cut of the movie.
that's
This was
insane.
his like,
That's insane.
here it is. Like, now that doesn't mean that it wouldn't have been trimmed, you know, like you leave fat on edits like that for exactly what you guys were talking about, for score. Because once score comes in, then you time it to score. You like retime it to score in that way. Right? Like so like, and I hope we can get into that too, the score. But like this is an actual like cut of the movie. This is like a decided, like, here you go. Here's the movie. Not here's everything we did. This is here's the movie, right? And like this does not feel like an assembly. This is not an assembly cut. This is not a this is phase 2 of the assembly cut. This is all right. What is the movie that we have? And I'm sure that, you know, Joel would have gone back and done some reshoot type stuff no matter what anyway, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, but there are certain decisions that this movie makes, this cut of it makes, where like no matter what he was going to reshoot or fine tune, it's really the lack of dubbing and the score, the temp score, that really show you what this movie was supposed to be from conception.
100%. And not to cut you off, the more that I thought about it, after we recorded our initial review, which, ladies and gentlemen, we pushed it out as fast as we possibly could. We wanted to record that episode when we got back from New Jersey on 3 hours of sleep, and we both decided that would probably not be a good idea at all. Even though that, like, as small amount of sleep as I had, I remembered the entire movie. And then when I woke up the next day, I was like, okay, now I have to go back through and, after you've had sleep, and try to remember all of that stuff.
You guys got close. You got very
close. I knew I was a little off because my attempt was to like actually go through scene for scene, and then it got fuzzy. I was like, well, at 4:30, like I was a little off for stuff, so I didn't want to try to state something was if it wasn't. But yeah, I mean, to me, and I already made my opinion on this on the other episode, but like, to me, this feels like the superior movie overall. I feel like if you could marry the two versions together in some way, it would be like, not to mention the ultimate cut or whatever, but like, it would really be like the best version of that movie in a way.
I think that the only thing you need to take from the other theatrical cut to help this one out is that Riddler scene. That's the only the why can't I kill you. I think that everything else from the theatrical cut, I actually think is a detriment to the movie tonally. And I actually, some of the, like, so when I say that you got really close in your thing, I'm talking you guys are at like 97%.
Oh,
you know
wow.
what I mean? Like, you were right. You're pretty, like, to put you at ease, you guys are saying it's somewhere between 20 to 30 minutes worth of new stuff. It is just a few frames over 28 minutes.
Wow. So we were pretty close then.
Yeah.
I'm actually surprised.
You're very close. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it is. I was actually surprised when I was done, fiddling with it, that I was surprised that it was so much. Because the final cut of the theatrical release is like, what, 2 hours and like 3 minutes or something like that.
Right.
And this one is 2 hours and 15 minutes. And actually, a mistake that I made in the Kevin Smith, when I was on Kevin Smith's podcast about this, I said that it was 2 hours and 35 minutes, but that's not what I meant. I meant to say that it was 135 minutes. You know what I mean? It was
okay.
I wasn't fully expecting to be up there and on mic and all that kind of stuff. Like, we can get into that in a minute too, if you want. But yeah, like even I made a couple of errors in going up there and spouting off about it. But the music for me, and it's the first time I noticed that that's my main problem with Batman Forever, is I think the score is terrible. I think the score
That's
is
fair.
is
That's fair.
I think it's dopey. I think it's like it sounds like circus music, and I get that there's a circus element, blah blah blah, but that's the wrong thing to take as your thematic center.
Like I even said
like
in our last episode, I've been a fan of it since I was a kid. I love the main theme. I've always loved it. I love the way that it opens the movie, but much like I said on the last episode, when I saw the movie, the footage edited together with other music that was more dramatic or darker or what have you, it's a different movie. It's a different movie, and it's closer to what I think the movie should have been.
Yeah, and that's kind of the fun of putting the HD footage over the work print that he had or whatever. That was kind of the fun of me, because I'm the one who put the HD footage.
Okay, so you're the one
screening.
that put the HD footage over that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did that, and that was kind of even more fun, because like you get to see that like that really is the main component that changed the tone of this movie, aside from a karate laundry here and there. The main component that like changed this movie was the music and the dubbing, because that's one part of your podcast about it that I actually like strongly disagree with, is that I think that Tommy Lee Jones got totally shafted, and I think that his performance in the Schumacher cut is significantly different. I think that those little differences make all the difference. And you guys, you were equating it to him doing the Joker. You know what I mean? Jack Nicholson's the Joker. And I just have a personal like tick about people comparing other villains to the Joker. Like, I know that Fast X just came out, which I adored. And I thought that Jason Momoa was like beyond brilliant in it. And I saw it at an early screening, and my friends were like, "Oh, he's just doing the Joker," and I was like, "What the hell are you talking about?" And they're like, "Oh, because he's like doing the flamboyant." I'm like, that's not synonymous with the Joker.
Well,
You know what I mean?
the way that I chalked it up to was he just
Yeah,
felt like a cackling villain. Where
sure, that's yeah.
yeah, like Two-Face, Harvey Dent should not be, regardless if you compare it to Aaron Eckhart's performance in The Dark Knight or whatever version, the animated series, the comics, whatever. It's just the fact that I think he had a hard time connecting with what am I supposed to do here. Like, we know when he got asked to do the role, he said, "Why me?" And he took
Mhm.
it reluctantly, only because his son wanted him to do it, and he did it. I'm not one of those people that think it's like the worst performance in comic book history. I think he felt a little lost in the room, on these huge sets. Like, okay, I'm here next to Jim Carrey. There's definitely like this strange like gay thing going on between the two of them, but not that I dislike it. I like it. I like their relationship in the movie.
No,
I just think
I
that
took no negative connotation
no,
there.
no,
Yeah.
no, 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 no. I mean, yeah. But it's Joel, and I think there's always going to be some of
Yeah.
that there. But I just feel like you have Tommy Lee Jones, and at the time, like this amazing dramatic actor, you ask him to be a comic book villain, and I think he took it like, well, this is what Jim's doing. I got to try to match that in my own way. It's not terrible. I do agree, the more that I think about it, after we did our review, that the dialogue, some of the dialogue that they gave him, in that Schumacher cut is better. It's fleshing out
Mhm.
his character more. It's actually presenting you with, because he always felt like he was taking a back seat the entire time in the theatrical cut. Like, in this cut gives him a lot more to do. We see how he breaks out. We hear more dialogue. It feels like he has more of an impact, where he's definitely an afterthought. And I think I could be wrong. This is just my theory that the studio said Jim Carrey's hot. Give me more Jim Carrey. Cut all this Batman backstory shit. We don't need any of this stuff. Jim Carrey's a huge fucking massive hit right now with everything. Give us more of him. Make it more poppy. I mean, I don't know if you agree with that or not, but like, to me, just looking at it on paper and comparing the two, it just feels like give us more of that. Just like they said,
100,000%.
yeah, with 89, give
Yeah.
us more Nicholson. He's amazing. Give us more
Yeah.
Nicholson.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. And like, yeah, you talk about this on your show too, on your podcast, that like Jim Carrey, people forget that it was less than 18 months between The Mask, Dumb and Dumber, Ace Ventura, Batman Forever, and Ace Ventura 2.
That's
There's
so
only
insane to
18
think.
months
It's
between
so
those movies.
wild. It's so wild. And all those
Right.
movies made money.
I mean, he was the biggest star in the world.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And then Will Smith came in the next year and took that title. But you're absolutely right. I agree with you 100% about the theatrical cut. I disagree about the Schumacher cut because here's why. At least I'll say why. Oh, but before I say, do you like Aaron Eckhart as Two-Face?
I mean, within the context of the Nolan movies and his universe, yes, I do. I mean, the character, whatever he was given to do in that grounded realism, I think was very good. I like his performance, and I like the makeup and all that stuff, or
Yeah.
CGI makeup rather. But yes, I do like it. But at the same time, it still feels like we could have a movie with Two-Face where he's scarred through the whole fucking movie, and it doesn't matter if it's
I
real or not.
Yeah, I to this day say that they made a big mistake with The Dark Knight. They should have ended The Dark Knight, should have ended when the Joker escapes. And there's that, and then you start part two with Batman standing over the wreckage, fucking quarter in his, the thing, coin in his hand, and then make a whole second movie with the Two Face
Well, dude,
unfolding and
I
give
don't
Aaron
know if
Eckhart
you
time
if
to.
you remember hearing this or not, but this was a very strong rumor at the time before the movie came out that Nolan's original intention was the third movie would still have Two-Face and Joker in it, and then another villain. That's what we heard, but I don't know how true that is or not.
Well, yeah, I mean, I stay out of Nolan news because
Because you don't like him. I get you.
It's a big thing between my friends and I try to be respectful and I try to, but I kind of panicked in a moment when I had an opportunity to have a face to face with Chris Nolan, and all I could say to him was do better.
I mean, so
Um,
what row are you going to be sitting in for Oppenheimer? Where are you seeing it?
Oh yeah, no kidding. I mean, I've already seen Barbie, and I'll tell you, there's only one, there's only one bomb I can stand per weekend. So I
Ooh,
will say
that's
that
rough.
if in
I don't see that
Oppenheimer
until
there's,
next week. Rough.
oh, it sucks to be you. If sorry Greta, but if I'll say
I
that
love Gosling though, so I'm sure he'll at least get me through the movie. Hopefully.
well, I mean, all 7 of his fans at the screening I went to sure did let him know that they were fans of what he was doing in that movie. But I will say that if in Oppenheimer, if there is an Easter egg where right before they drop that bomb, we see a little mini Indiana Jones running into like one of the houses or something, like right before the bomb goes off, I will take back every negative thing I've ever said about Chris Nolan. If he gives us just a little Indiana Jones running from house to house right before the bomb goes off, that way we know that this movie takes place in the same universe as fucking Crystal Skull. That would be cool. Yeah, I stay out of Nolan completely. But anyways, Tommy Lee Jones in this though as Two-Face. One element that I feel like never gets like really like that no one else has explored is that when you're a lawyer, there, especially a trial lawyer, which he is, and he does this in the what's the other Schumacher movie, The Client. There's a pageantry to those kinds of people. They have to perform. They have to be larger than life and trying to get that jury, especially a movie lawyer, to get the jury on their side. You know what I mean? And he has that quality to him in this cut, and that is exasperated by the manic scarred half. Like, so there's nowhere to go but up with the manic, nasty, ghoulish version of that guy. I actually give Tommy Lee Jones a lot of credit. I think that he played it right on the money, and that the studio, like you said, was like, we need more of the Carrey-isms. We need him to match Jim Carrey. We need that. Because it's fair to say that at least a third, if not half of his lines are dubbed.
Oh, for sure. I
In
was
the
surprised by
theatrical
that.
cut.
I was very surprised by
Like,
that.
there's 2 "Who the hell are yous" in this movie that are dead giveaways. Like, so like when the Riddler first comes to his hideout and he's like, "I hope you made extra." You know, in the theatrical cut, fucking Two-Face, do you remember how he says it? He goes, "Who the hell are you?"
Who the hell are you?
Right,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just a
And in the
friend.
Schumacher
You
cut,
can call me the Riddler.
see, you know it. You know it. Like, you're good. So in the Schumacher cut, it literally is exactly like this. He just goes, "Who the hell are you?" It's that, like, "Who the hell are you?" It's nothing more than that. Same thing with you mentioned the guy's name, the
Don the
Dayglow
Dragon Wilson. Yeah.
bad guy, Don the Dragon Wilson. Yeah, like that you talk about on your podcast. Like the first when he has it, like, "Who the hell are you?" Like, we all know that. "Who the hell are you?" Like it's like this really deep whatever. And in this version, it's "Who the hell are you?"
It's the same
It's
thing.
like
Yeah.
just
So unassuming.
yeah, it was like my hat flew off my head when I saw it. I was like, "What? Like that's not what that guy sounds like." But actually that note, it might be a good one. Like, that's another good studio. Dub that guy. Make him sound like he's been eating a lot of rocks.
He must have felt like shit when he went, if he did go to the premiere and showed me like, oh, they dubbed my fucking voice, man. Oh man, I'm not that low.
Who knows? Maybe he did it. I don't know.
Maybe he did it. There's like,
he's
be
"Oh,
louder and deeper and sound scary, and then we're gonna
yeah."
add an effect to it or something. I don't know, but so
give us Sylvester Stallone after reading the reviews for Daylight. That was the direction they gave him.
Or Judge Dredd. I am the law. Drop your weapons.
Now,
which also came out
see,
the
now
same
that
summer.
movie and is much better. I love Judge Dredd.
I do too. We did a whole anniversary episode on that a few years ago. Hey, we could maybe potentially do another episode on that. But so I have to ask you though. So Kevin saw it. He announced he saw it. How did that connection happen between you, Kevin seeing it, you going on his show, all of that stuff? Because at this point, I mean, I've already let the cat out of the bag. When we were at his screening, he never once, like I said on the last episode, mentioned Batman Forever or Batman or anything like that. But when he mentioned that he would potentially screen it, I immediately went because I wanted to see it, and I saw it. So he's let the cat out of the bag at this point. Like everyone knows. He hasn't. I don't
Mm-hmm.
believe he's publicly stated anything about it since he screened it. Even when I've commented and like tagged him and stuff to see if he would respond about it. But so how did that all come to be? If you don't mind me asking, if there's anything you can say about that.
Yeah, I could say plenty about that. That's fine. I uh, Dogma is. I've always loved movies, and my whole life I knew that I wanted to be involved in movies since I was cognizant. When I was 5 years old, I told my mom I wanted to act in a scene with Prank from The Flash. Corinne Bohr, who to this day is still maybe my favorite actress. And so I've always known that I wanted to be involved. And when I was a kid, I was an actor, but I never really. I it was fine, but it was not the fit. And then I saw Dogma, and that changed everything. Dogma was the film that inspired me to become a filmmaker. I thought that it was so incredibly brilliant and so well thought out. I'm sure you're familiar with Dogma.
Yes.
I mean, like a quick example is the Golgothan shit demon. Like, Hell's chief assassin's big walking pile of crap, as she calls it. It's funny enough, but he brilliantly weaves in this explanation that this was, from the hill where Christ was crucified, everyone else up there was murderous, rapists, thieves. And when they would die, their bodies would excrement. And Satan collected all of that and turned it into Hell's chief assassin. Like that's brilliant. That is like so funny and such a rich idea. And then how did they defeat it? With some air freshener that says knocks strong odors out. Why do you have this? Jay farts, he sprays. Brilliant. Like a great, like Dogma is an absolutely brilliant work of art. It's brilliant. And I became a Kevin Smith acolyte after that. And like so many Kevin Smith fans, like, especially during that era, his work became scripture. I know his work by heart. The Clerks animated series, I can quote every line of that. My brother and I, at least half of our communication with each other, because he lives across the country, is just Clerks quotes, Clerks the cartoon quotes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Without getting into too much detail about it, Clerks 2 saved my life. That's the best way to put it. It actually, like, sincerely saved my life to watch Dante and Randall. Well, Dante especially, he rejected the thing that he hated the most about himself, which was working at the store. And it was leading him down a miserable path, literally to a road to hell. The place burns to the ground. And then after the place burns to the ground, what does he do? The exact same thing he was doing before. And he's in denial that the problem was him. And that at the end of the movie, that he rebuilds the store in his image. Like he takes ownership of it. He claims it for himself and rebuilds it with his community of friends. And like that's just like the most incredible finale, and like there is, not to get too religious about it, but there is a religious, if you will, God element to it, in that Alanis Morissette is singing the song that they rebuild the
Right.
store to, and she plays God, and that Jay and Silent Bob, who are now like evangelical Christians, they're the ones who give him the money to, do it. And whatever you believe spiritually, just let's call it God, if you will, or faith, even not even religious faith, but faith that you can do this. Like literally building your foundation of your life on faith, not necessarily in God, but just faith, like that even you can do it. That was incredible. Like what a great place he must have been at in his life. Skip down the line. I move out to LA. Kevin Smith and we meet up a few times because he used to come to the theater that I was working at. And I made my first movie in LA, which was my fifth movie that I had made, but it was my first movie in LA. And I got it to him and he liked it. And he hired me to work on a couple of his movies, just work crew. And it was my first paid work in LA, my first paid professional work in LA. I can't tell you how much it meant to me to cash a paycheck with the View Askew,
That had to be
logo
awesome.
on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, or like to receive a script that had my name watermarked on it. You know what I mean? Like with Kevin's, you know what I mean? Like that was like amazing. And I would see him speak and stuff like that every now and then. I don't follow him in that way. I don't go to his podcast. I don't listen to his podcast. I don't, to me it's the movies. That's what I follow, But every now and then he would do like a Q&A with like another filmmaker or something, and he'd moderate it or something, and I'd check those out. And every time he would always just talk about what a shitty director he was. Like he always would do that. And he one time he was doing the moderating the Q&A at the premiere for Mandy, which I got to go to. And Bill Duke was like kicking me in the back he was sitting right behind me, and he's so large. Every time
That's amazing.
Like, damn it, Bill Duke. But he's interviewing, what's his name? What's the director's name of that? Cosmatos?
Yes.
Whatever his name is.
Yes.
Yeah. I thought the first opening credits of Mandy, I was like, this is amazing. I'll go anywhere with this movie. After the opening credits, I was like, ooh, anywhere but here. I thought that movie was awful.
See.
And Kevin is up there.
So funny,
yeah,
man.
Again,
it's so funny. We're like so opposite on so much.
That's good though. That's so
no, for
necessary.
Sure. For sure.
But like,
for sure.
so like he goes up there, and Kevin the whole time just keeps talking about how you're a real director, not like me. I'm not a real director. And from the audience, I screamed, fucking stop. Like I'd had enough. I was like, just stop. Like, I don't know if he heard me. There was no exchange, but like to me, I used to get made fun of by my film teachers for being such a Kevin Smith fan. You know how much it sucks to be like a budding artist trying to learn how to be a filmmaker, and you're told that the very reason you do it is a joke? Like, you know what I mean? And then what's worse than that is that the guy who you're talking about also says the same shit. It's like, no, like you mean something to people. Like your work means something to people is what I should say, because nobody knows him. You know what I mean? Like Clerks is not a movie that like was of its time. Clerks defined its time. Clerks to me is the Purple Rain of the 90s. Purple Rain defined the 80s. You know what it was like, and Clerks defined what the 90s were for that generation. He's, so I'm already like on this weird path. He has the heart attack, which was, like just, we're all glad he survived. He makes Jay and Silent Bob reboot. I go to see it. It's fucking terrible. I thought it was terrible.
Okay, so we agree on that one then.
But it was a victory lap. I didn't die. I got all of my friends back together. You know what I mean? Sure, fine, do your thing. Then I get an email in 2021, October 2021, that he sent to like some View Askew people that like, hey, we're trying to get a collection of 40 people together to watch the first rough cut of Clerks 3 to get some feedback. Do you want to come? Because I'm on the View Askew thing or whatever from working with them and stuff. And I said yes, and I got to bring my brother. Just so happened to be in town visiting, and I got to bring my brother. Right,
that's awesome.
Which was like really, yeah, it was amazing. Like my younger brother, my kid brother, and like, yeah, it was really meaningful. Like, so we go, and I'm there, and I recognize a few people there that I, are either friends with or like worked with or whatever. Like so, 40 of us in there. He shows up almost an hour late.
Same thing as he just did the other night.
Yeah, he does it every time. High as a kite, and he says like, first thing he says is, "Sorry for making you wait, kids. I was watching Shang-Chi." And I was like, first of all, kids, like, don't condescend to me that way after you're an hour late. I've been here for 2.5 hours waiting for you. You know what I mean? Like, and two, I know you've seen Shang-Chi already. And three, I know where he lives. He lives like right up the road from where we were at. Like, we're talking 5 minutes, and that's in LA traffic, 5 minutes, right? Like, it just wasn't cool, but whatever. The movie starts, and I mean, have you seen Clerks 3?
I have not. Only seen 2. I've not seen 3. That was something I mentioned.
Oh,
to my
lucky,
co-host.
Lucky. Oh my, you blessed man. Yeah, it's terrible. And the ending is so shocking it's such a contrast to Clerks 2 that, do you care if I spoil anything?
I don't care if you, well, as long as you're letting the fans know that are listening now, ladies and gentlemen, he's about to spoil the end of Clerks 3.
You've had a year to see it.
Feel
My
free.
condolences. Yeah, Dante dies. And in this movie, do you remember the character Elias?
Yes.
At the beginning of the movie, Elias goes from being a Christian to swearing his life to Satan to save Randall's life, because Randall has a heart attack, and Elias says, Satan, if you like save his life, I'll swear my life to you. So he spends the rest of the movie as a Satanist. And then he survives and he wants to make a movie, and Dante has to be the producer for some reason. So Dante, for some reason, borrows the money from Emma, the Kevin Smith's wife, his fiance, his failed fiance from Clerks 2, like, who randomly agrees to give him the money they need to make it, in using his half of the store as collateral if they don't make the money back or whatever, which I've always been like, why would she give him the money? Anyways, they're making the movie, and like, they're in the middle of shooting a dramatic scene, and Dante has like a freak out where he's had enough of Randall's shit, and Dante has a heart attack, goes to the hospital, he's going to die. Randall cuts the movie together in time, sneaks into the hospital, shows it to Dante, who's tied up to a bunch of tubes and shit and can't even talk, and he shows him the movie, and the movie is actually just footage from the original Clerks, right?
Okay.
And you see Dante sitting in a movie theater in heaven, watching it with his dead wife Becky. Oh, we found out Rosario Dawson died like a week after Clerks 2 is set. She died while pregnant with his child. Like, so yeah, she's dead this whole movie. Right, exactly. So, and then before that movie's even done, he's watching Clerks in a movie theater in heaven. He says to her, let's go. And she goes, but it's not your time yet. And he goes, I trust the director from here. And then Dante dies. And then Randall hasn't done anything with the movie, so Emma comes to collect what she's owed, and that's his half of the store. But luckily, in a Deus Ex Machina moment, Elias has overnight become a millionaire because of an NFT he has, and he uses that money to buy back the store from Emma to pay her off. And he literally says the line, I may not have earned my spot behind this register, but I can buy it. And then that's how the movie ends. And in the context of Kevin Smith, it's like, did you just make a movie where you feel like, a large part of you died from that heart attack, and then your wife sold your legacy off to the devil to replace that part of you that died? You know what I mean? Because like,
rough.
Yeah, and we put it in that context because Kevin, was a Catholic, if you will. So like, we can put it in that context because of his whatever. And so like, at the end of the movie, the lights come up and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, and he comes up and he says, who in here liked the movie? And everyone raises their hands. And he's like, who in here didn't like the movie? And me and my brother, like, right away, raise our hands. And he says to me, he goes, oh, cool. What didn't you like about it? And I was like, what? You really want me to tell you? And he goes, yeah. I was like, you really want me to say? And he's like, yeah, that's what this is all about. And I was like, okay. And as you said, film is subjective, right? So I can't objectively be like, this isn't funny. This looks like crap. There's no story here. I can't do that. That's not constructive, right? All I can do is bring up what bothered me about the content, right? He snapped and started like getting really heated with me in front of everybody. And like, it was like really weird. And I obviously had overstepped my boundary in some way, but it was weird to have him like, and I'm not trying to say anything negative about him by saying this, but he snapped, and art is personal. So like, sure. But eventually I said, can we talk about this later? Because we're in a room of 40 people. He's like, oh, we'll talk about it later. I was like, okay. And he entertained me for a while. We talked for about 20 minutes in front of these people. I'm going to leave at, an hour later because he kept talking to people and they all had problems with the movie, but he had an excuse for why they were all wrong. As we're going to leave, he pulls me aside. He starts talking to me again. And it's kind of like the same thing. It's really heated. It's really weird. And like everybody there starts forming like a little circle around us, almost like a schoolyard, fight or something. And I said, look, I've obviously hit a nerve. I just watched the movie. I'm still processing what I just saw. Can I just email you my thoughts if you really want to know them? And he goes, yeah, you send me an email. So he goes, yeah, you send me an email. I said, okay. So I went home and I wrote an email, and it was 13 pages long. And I sent it to him and didn't hear back. But I sent it to the other people who were there that night that I knew. And I asked them afterward as we were leaving, I was like, did I like it? And they were like, no, like, they were like, that was really weird. Like, and some of these guys I don't really know that well. So I trusted, because I don't want to be a jerk. You know what I mean?
Right, of course
I
not.
don't,
Yeah.
I don't want to, yeah. But like, I sent it to them and they were like, yo, this letter is really nice. Like, this is a really good, thoughtful letter. Like, it's tough love, but it's thoughtful. So then I sent it to like some of my other friends who know about me and Kevin, like about Clerks and how much, and they all were like, wow, like this makes me not want to see the movie. Like, but this is a really beautiful, like, thought out. And then when the movie trailer dropped a year later, or like the next summer, all of these people who I haven't talked to in 15, 16 years start coming out of the woodwork like, your boy's back with the new Clerks movie, man, and it looks like it's great, and I was just like getting all these people just like, oh my God, I haven't talked to you since fucking film school, and no, this movie hurts, it's terrible, and it was my wife and my friend Lewis, who Lewis was also there at the screening that night. He was not really familiar with Kevin's work at the time, and he was like, dude, does that guy want to kill himself? He called it a suicidal manifesto. My wife and Lewis both convinced me. They were like, you should take your letter and turn it into a YouTube video essay, which I'd never done before. And I didn't want to do that because that's not what I'm about. It's not my place. But then it was my wife who said, like, there are going to be a lot of people when the movie comes out that are in your position, that are like really affected by it. And they're going to want to know that they're not alone, because the way that Kevin does these things is that, he does the Fandango fans only screenings and then also tours the movie.
Of
You
course.
know what I mean? So like,
yeah.
having a negative opinion of it makes you stand out because you're in a sea of acolytes, which, so like that could be scary, so because of that, I was like, okay, I'll do it. And I did. I spent the next month and I put it together, and this is before the movie came out. And so the footage, he had released a couple clips and a trailer or two and stuff. So I was intercutting that. I break down the whole movie, much like you guys did with Batman Forever. And what I didn't have footage wise, I actually hired a couple of artists, one of them being my brother, to draw storyboards in the Clerks animation style.
Oh, wow, that's
to like fill in the gaps.
Nice.
And then I pulled clips from his earlier work, and by the end, the video is 1 hour and 7 seconds long. And I released it the day the movie came out, the night that it came out, so that people could immediately after it watch it. And it was my biggest thing ever by a long mile. I think it's sitting, which this is for YouTube numbers is like, whatever, but it's at like over 33,000 views. Which
nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, my next highest video is 10,000 views, and I released it in 2011. You know what I mean? Like, so
right,
like,
right, yeah.
Yeah, and so it was like, and people were emailing me, coming out of nowhere, telling me that, like, and then I started getting emails because I didn't put any of my contact info, but I have a website for my company and all that. And people just traced it, much like they did after the Batman Forever thing. And a couple people reached out to me saying, like, hey, you mentioned in this, because I didn't bring up the whole interaction with me and him in the video, because it was just the letter, but they're like, what screening did you go to of this? What did you, so I emailed them back and I kind of told them what I just told you. And these people who I've never met before in my life, they were getting back to me saying, dude, he's talking about you, like, on tour. Like, I've seen it. I've gone to like 2 of the shows, or like one guy saw a cut of it in December, a month after I had, and Kevin was talking about it, and all this. Like, he's talking about you. He's, like, you really pissed him off that night.
Holy
I was like, damn.
Wow, that's
and like,
nuts.
It was a bummer because, like, all I did was speak the truth, and I only spoke the truth when he asked
you. Right, exactly. It's not like you
right?
stood out and fucking yelled at him or anything out of place. He asked for an opinion, you gave the opinion.
That's my whole thing. That's why I've never wanted to do a YouTube channel or anything. It's like, there's no point in putting it out there unless you've been asked, because it's not yours, right? Like, unless you are a professional critic, or that's what you want to do, which is not what I want to do. I want to create, you know what I mean? so it was just, it hurt. And I remember it must have been like what the Red Letter Media guys felt like when Shatner was talking shit about them. It's like, yeah, it's kind of funny and he's wrong, but like, still, it sucks that Captain Kirk doesn't like me. You know, like that Captain Kirk hates me. Like that sucks. For me, it was like, it sucks that Kevin doesn't like me.
Well, that's
You know what I mean?
apparently
That
not the
like,
case now, though, right? That can't be the case now.
well, so when I got the, you know, when I found out that they were doing a screening of Jersey Girl in New Jersey, he announced he was going to do his Snyderverse cut, as he called it, which was his 2.5 hour work print, which for Kevin Smith fans is like the Schumacher cut. Is like, it's a coveted, like, we've known about it for 20 years. We want to see it, you know. And first time I ever met Kevin, I told him that it's on my bucket list to see that 2.5 hour cut of Jersey Girl, because that's one of my favorite movies. Jersey Girl really is one of my favorite films. And so I asked the person who had the Schumacher cut, I said, look, could I give this to Kevin as like an olive branch?
Yeah.
And he said, you know, they were like, yeah, that's fine. And so I did. I put it on a thumb drive. Well, what's really funny is that I had it on my computer, or I thought that I did, but I didn't. So I actually had to, like, last minute, like, it was a weird, like, I'm technologically like inept. But anyways, I got it on a thumb drive last minute, and I flew from Los Angeles to Florida and met with my brother and my mom and dad and spent a few days down there. Then my brother and I drove 15 hours
You
from Jacksonville,
drove?
Florida, up the
Holy
Highlands.
shit.
Yeah,
That's
up the
wild.
Highlands. And we sat down to watch the movie. It's supposed to start at 5 o'clock. We got in the theater at 5:30, and then waited a half hour. And then at 6 o'clock, he started a 2 hour auction.
Yeah, he did like a
And
2.5 hour auction at ours, and we didn't talk much about
yeah,
it in detail, but I can tell you right now, I can finally admit it. It was exhausting.
yeah, of course. I mean, it was, you know, and some of the stuff he was selling, I'm like, geez. But one of the things he was selling was the auction out for the printed test scores of the first test screening of Jersey Girl. And I was like, ooh, that's kind of cool. Like, I'll bid on that. And this is like an hour into this auction. Nobody has bid $69 for anything. And I was like, how? How are we in a room of Kevin Smith fans and nobody's offered $69? Like,
They did it a
so
bunch at
he opens
ours.
bid.
They did it a bunch at ours.
Right. Well, there you go. Like, yeah, I started the trend. Okay. Because like
You're the
he
originator.
mentions, like, yeah, that's me. I came up with the 69 joke. No, somebody bid 50, I bid 69. He's like, 69, very cool. Anybody beat that? And somebody's like, 76. I was $69 and I have something for you on this thumb drive. And he was like, okay. So he called me up and I was like, hey, and I'm walking up, I'm like, it's a Schumacher cut of Batman. He's like, oh my God. And he's like, who are you, new best friend? And I'm like, dude, it's me, Joe Black. You don't remember? And I swear to God, like, I mean, you can see this. I don't know if anyone else could, but he literally went like this. He was like his face just like dropped. And he's like, oh yeah, yeah. He's like, yeah, yeah, I remember you, man. And I was like, cool, how you been? He's like, I'm good. How about you? I'm like, I'm good. I give him the thing. I take the Clerks thing. And so after the auction, like, fucking finally, it's 8 o'clock, and the lights go down and the screen lights up, and the trailer for The Flash started. And I was like, oh my God, like, what the fuck? Like, I just want to watch this fucking movie. So I got up to take a piss. And as I'm leaving the theater, he's standing in the back.
Yeah, he was
And
doing that
he
at our
pulled me
screening
aside.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, he pulled me aside and he was like, hey man, he's like, hey, he's like, yeah, it's you and your brother, right? Like, your brother here's, you know, you, and I was like, yeah. And he goes, look, man, like, and he starts crying. He's like, I've been talking about you for like 2 years on this tour. And I was like, yeah, I know, I heard. Like, and he said, I'm sorry for how things went down. And I just want you to know that you did nothing wrong. You know, you just spoke your truth. And he's like, and you prepared me for how people were going to receive that movie. And I'm not trying to be petty when I say this, but like, it stood out to me that he said, I'm sorry for how it went down. Not that he didn't say, I'm sorry for how I acted or how I, you know what I mean? Like, so that like stuck with me, that he didn't apologize in a way. Like, it was like, you know, not that he had to, but I just want to point that out. Like, that matters to me. But he got done saying what he was saying, and you know, he's tearful, and I was appreciative. And I said, "Look, I promise you that nothing you did or said that night hurt or disturbed me nearly as much as the movie itself." And he laughed. He thought that was really funny, and he said, "Are you still LA based?" I said, "Yes." He goes, "Dude, come to the Smodcast, the Fat Man Beyond podcast, the week after the Flash, and we'll, you know, like, I'll talk about the Schumacher cut." And I said, "Look, you can tell people you saw it, but you can't tell people that you have it, and you can't tell anybody that I gave it to you." And he was like, "Of course not, of course not, of course not."
And
I was
it
like, "Okay,
sounds
cool."
like he did both of those things.
2 nights later, he goes on, or like 3 nights later, he goes on his podcast. He did a Zoom podcast, and I've got the Snyder Cut. I'm going to make you a copy, Mark, so that you can watch it, and then we're going to talk about it on the, you know. And I was like, fuck, like, you know. So my wife and I go to the podcast a couple weeks later, and oh, what did you think of the Flash?
Oh, I saw it. Warner Brothers invited me to see it at CinemaCon like many months ago. I'm a big fan.
Loved it. I loved it.
Yeah.
I
mean, if you can see, I have the Keaton
I do.
teaser one sheet in my light box there. He's my favorite Batman of all
I didn't know if
time.
that was
So
just because it was Keaton. So
yeah, no, I mean, it's just we've been a huge supporter of the movie in terms of the brand. Myself, I've been, honestly, I won't lie to you, I've used the Schumacher cut and the excitement from this to allow myself to mend my wounds over the box office and how it was received overall. So I've kind of taken a few steps back from it, because it took up like a good 4-5 months of my life, like indefinitely, where it was an everyday thing, and it hurt me a little bit. So I'll leave it at that. But yes, I loved it. So far, it's my favorite movie of the year as of right this second. But I do see the new Mission Impossible tomorrow, so we'll see where we go with that. But yeah,
so far my favorite movie of the year is Maestro, and the Roadhouse remake.
You've seen the Roadhouse remake, motherfucker? Are you? Oh my god! Yeah. Oh, I love the original so much, but that is one of those movies where it will be very difficult to see anyone else other than Patrick Swayze. But anyways,
I can't say anything.
I digress.
I saw a test screening, but yeah. Talk to me later.
Yes, we'll chat. We'll be chatting about that.
But I loved the Flash. I loved the Flash. And we got there to the podcast an hour before it was supposed to start, and he showed up an hour late. So it's 8:00 when it's supposed to start at 7, and they don't start until 8:30, I guess. And then the whole first hour and a half of it was talking about the Flash, and like Kevin really liked it, and it's the first time in a long time that I've actually like agreed with Kevin's perspective on a movie.
Very nice.
Then Mark was talking, and everything he said was like, I don't know, man. And I found it like racist. He was like saying the whole galaxy has to like change because of the death of one white suburban housewife. And I'm like, she's not white. Like, I'm like, what? Like,
she's not white at all. Did he not hear her accent?
I know. I was like, she's Hispanic. And he goes, and he turns to me, like, I'm in the crowd. He turns to me, he goes, ever been to Spain? White people live in Spain. Go to Spain and let me know. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like it was very weird. It was a very weird, but anyways, they started to talk about the Schumacher cut. And Mark was like, I haven't seen it yet. I did not get a chance to watch it. Blah, blah, blah. And Kevin, I swear to God, he goes, well, before I talk about the Schumacher cut, let me tell you a little bit about the origins of how I got it. And he turns and looks at me and goes, like that. And I'm like, and he's like, what's your name? And I was like, what? Joe Black. He's like, Joe Black gave it to me. And I'm like,
holy fuck.
Because at that point, he, you know, and
were you like shaking at that moment? Like, how did that feel for him to put you on the spot and fucking say your name in front of all these people?
Look, it was fine. It like I don't want to sound like I'm trying to like say that I'm mad at Kevin Smith about this.
Oh no. I just
fine.
Mean, I feel like I would have been taken aback a little bit, like, oh my god, like
I was
being put on the spot. You know,
like, no, like no. But he said, don't worry, the cameras aren't looking at you. They can't see your face. And I said, I mean, at this point, fuck it, like, you know. And he goes, well, come on up, you know. And we got to talk about it. And it was cool because at first we were talking about Batman Forever, and then he brought up the Clerks 3 thing.
Oh shit.
And he it was nice though, because it was like a he let me speak my piece, and he didn't seem attacked in a way. Like, we had it, and I held my ground, like, because he told everybody, he's like, Joe said to me that night, like, you've betrayed your fans and betrayed yourself. The audience is like, oh, and I said, and I still feel that way. Like, I don't know, but it was just about standing my ground, and me, and it kind of ended with, and I also pitched what I would have done with the ending of Clerks 3, and then I also, like, told him that, like, the ending felt disingenuous to me, because, like, you are better than you give yourself credit for, basically. And, like, the last talk he did, right, the day that he had his heart attack, they filmed a talk he did earlier that day, and he ended that talk by talking about how not talented he was. And I told him that, like, that's just not true, and I understand what he meant by that, because he's like, it doesn't take talent to do what I do, so don't think that you can't do it because you're not talented, blah blah blah. And it's like, no, it does. Like, you changed it. We're all here because of your talent. And as soon as you can get, and I got to tell him, like, in front of his whole audience, like, and on the thing, like, as soon as you get over that, like, it's gonna be a great life, like, for you, like, because that's what matters to me. So, like, the Schumacher cut thing was I did not give it to him to to get in his good graces. I did not give it to him to be on his show. Uh, I did not give it to him knowing that anybody would know about it. I gave it to him, like, to say, like, I'm sorry for to steal a quote from him. I'm sorry for how it went down that night.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
That's perfectly fitting though, within the context of what you're saying
Yeah.
to him versus what he said to you.
And then at the end of the podcast, an hour later, he announces that he was going to screen it at his theater, and I'm like, oh my god, like, damn, like,
So wait,
son of a bitch.
so when he said that, like, did you say anything to him? Did you guys talk about it, or did he just basically
No,
walk off and
because
be
he was
like,
up on stage, and then and so, like, I spent the time trying to get with his people, like, look, he cannot do it, he can't do that, he can't, whatever. So, and we worked it out, and you ended up seeing the version that whatever you saw. Like, I jumped through some hoops and made sure that was the version that everybody saw, with the HD footage,
which
and,
is still, like you
time
said
code.
earlier, the version I saw is still the Schumacher cut.
100%.
Yes,
I did not change a single.
Right.
Well, I told you I changed one little thing where, like, the slow motion shot of Robin jumping on the chandelier in Wayne Manor was, like, a few frames longer in the Schumacher cut, but it was still slow motion. I just slowed down the slow motion shot just a little bit more to match the same time. But other than that, I didn't change a thing, because I thought that part of the fun of seeing it would be, like, where you see, even by a frame or two, how that frame or two can make all the difference.
Of course. Yeah.
And you know what I mean? So, like, I thought that was really important. If I had my way, I'd throw in the fucking Joker or the Riddler thing again. Why can't I kill
the Riddler
you? Like,
ending,
if I was going to do anything to it, I would throw that right back in there. But, like, it's not about me. It's not about, like, this. Like, look at your podcast, man. Like this thing that you're doing. Like, and even if it's not your podcast or your audience, dude, I barely know you. Like, the fact that this has done anything, even if it's just been like a shelter from the Flash shitstorm, or whatever. Like, that's important to me.
I mean, what
Like,
it's done for us is magical in a sense. I mean, I'm like I said, I've been part of the movement in terms of the tweet storms that I've been a part of with @CutSchumacher on Twitter. I've always believed that it exists. I'm the type of person that I'll never say something doesn't exist unless I see proof that it doesn't. And hearing so much talk about it, and us seeing all that additional footage over the years, I'm like, it exists. It's there. It has to exist. And I won't lie. I wanted to be like the first person to fucking see it. I really that's important to me. Like, just like when I saw the Flash at CinemaCon a few months ago, it was really exciting. Like, it's like feels like you're a kid again. You know what I mean? Like this excitement that's boiling inside you. And we went through hell to see it. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I mean, like I told in the last episode, we sat until 3 a.m, and I was just so thankful and appreciative that I got to see it. I think it's special that I got to see it, and I think people appreciate it, and also just confirming to the world, so many people that this is important to, that are fans, that now they know it's real. And you coming on right now and discussing it further is helping push that in terms of the fans and them realizing like it's possible. You could possibly see this
I
at some time in the future.
I just wish that, like, I hope that they don't, like, like, the problem with the Schumacher cut and other people seeing it is that if they do some kind of, like, I know you guys talked about, and Kevin and Mark talked about on their podcast, like releasing like an extended cut on the 30th anniversary, you know, Blu-ray
Which
or
is only
whatever
2 years
of it.
away. We're only two
Uh,
years away right now.
right. Like, it still won't be the same because it'll have different music. It'll have, you know what I mean? And like that'll be because some of that stuff, you got stuff like you said from Pee Wee. There's stuff from Interview with the Vampire. There's
Okay,
stuff
so
from, you know
that's
what I
what
mean?
that's what that's from. Okay. All right. Good to know.
Yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah.
I
A
knew
lot
there
from
was some
Interview.
music that sounded familiar, but I didn't know exactly what it was.
Yeah, the gothic gay filmmakers of Hollywood in the mid '90s had to stick together at that time.
Right?
Like Neil Jordan and Joel Schumacher. What a powerful force they were in the '90s. I Working in tandem. But like, it's just a shame that, like, the business side of this art form industry, like, is just so fucking awful. It just would, like, do you know what, like, I think the most accurate show about how this industry works is, honestly, is that new show that everyone hates, The Idol.
Oh, with
That is like
the
the
weekend.
most
Yeah, yeah.
that is like one of the most accurate portrayals I've seen of how this industry works and the people within it. Like, and I'm like, that's why nobody likes it, and that's why everybody thinks it's dumb and they can't believe it because it's so true. Um, the business side of this industry is so, it has to be what it is though. Like, so before I, like, talk shit about it, it has to be that way to make things work. Unfortunately, there has to be a system in place. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because, like, because the creatives, we're so self-indulgent, we'll run it into the ground, you know. So, like, you need it, you need it. That being said, I prefer what Frank Zappa said about music. He's like, the problem with music nowadays is that, like, when you're trying to do stuff in the 60s, it was a bunch of old dudes chomping on cigars saying, yeah, do whatever the hell you want, I don't know what you're talking about. But then when you started trying to make music in the 70s, the executives now are like these people who thought they were young, hip, cool people who knew what their finger, had their finger on the pulse and knew what they were talking about and how to tell artists how to make their movies, or and music and such. Um, so, like, the business side of this will mean that no way will this movie ever be seen by a major audience in this purest form,
So you don't. So that's what I was going to
unless
ask you. So you don't truly believe that Warner Brothers will put any effort at all whatsoever into this and release it in any shape or form.
I think they will, but it won't be. I think that if
It
they,
won't
I
be
think they
the
will.
okay, but it won't be
It won't
the
be the
version
same.
that I saw in
Right,
a
and that's
sense.
not to say that, like, unless they hire somebody to, like, redo a score that is more in tune with the music in this version, like no, I don't think so. Um, it won't be the same movie at the end of the day
That is
without
very
it.
true. That's
So
very true. And that's something that I mentioned on our episode that you listened to. I said the music made all the difference. Even though it's just temp track music, it made it feel different. It
the
gave a
tone,
different vibe and the tone and
yeah,
everything. Yeah, for sure.
that and the ADR, like, or the lack of, like, those two components. And like I said, like, if people end up seeing it one day, like this version, like, just know my hands are completely clean of it. I gave Kevin what I had, like, because I don't want this to get out there. I don't want this to become a thing. I don't want anybody to lose money. I don't want anybody to lose faith. I don't want anybody to lose jobs. I don't want this to be something that people like I like it was for him as far as I'm concerned. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
like,
Yes.
whether that was a mistake for my sake is yet to be seen, but
Well,
whatever.
if it was, Joe, thank you. You made a dream
Dude, I
come
mean,
true for me. You made a dream come true for me.
well,
So
yeah, and like, what am I gonna do? Am I gonna complain that like this comes back to my the ass? You know what I mean? Like who the fuck am I? Like I have but one life to give for my country. No, I like fucking gave Kevin Smith Batman Forever, and if like that something happens to me because of that, then so fucking be it. But like I again like it's you know I'm glad that it meant something. Even if the only people who ever see it ever are the 25 people who were in that theater that night and my friends a couple years ago, like I know for a fact that those 30 to 40 people are very grateful to have seen it, and to have any kind of hand in that is a nice feeling. I did not like I don't want this to get out there in that way without anybody's permission. I don't want I just I'm just glad that it's done what it did already. Like that's really nice. It was not my intention at all, and I hope that Kevin, is grateful. Um, which he seems to be, but he did throw me under the bus.
he did,
um,
but he liked it though, and he said it was a better movie. And I
yeah,
think if
yeah,
anything, he pushed
it is.
forward the movement in a positive direction in terms of the people that have been pursuing this for so long. So it was a good thing what you did in terms of that olive branch turned into an entire tree that's growing and it's becoming
It
larger and
it bore an
really
olive or two.
yeah. I mean, so all these things are positives. And as we wrap this up here, do you have any final thoughts on the
It's
Schumacher cut as a whole?
it's significantly better, in my opinion. I think it's when I was watching it in that little private screening or whatever you want to call it, a while back, I thought to myself, like, this is the best Batman movie that I've ever seen. And then Act Three happened, and I went, never mind, because the movie can't fix the two major problems. The Schumacher cut does not fix the two major problems. One of which being the whole third act on Riddler Island. I think all of that is just a wash. But another thing that I don't think you can fix is something that I know from listening to your podcast you and I disagree on, which is that I think Kilmer stinks. I think he stinks in both versions. I think that he is driven by ego and not the character. I think Kilmer is driven by ego. I think his performance is disingenuous, and I think it's disconnected. And the Schumacher cut can't fix that. It just gave him better things to do, in my opinion. That's for me. And um, I hope that when they do eventually, if and when they do eventually release like a closer version to the Schumacher cut is like some kind of special edition. I hope that everybody's very happy with seeing all the new stuff, because the new stuff is great. It's all great. There's not a bit of new stuff that is uh that's a wash for me. I think all the new stuff is really really lovely, and I, unlike you guys, liked the way that Batman Falling was intercut with the from
Oh, when he's
Lady
falling
Gotham's
from Lady
face when he's
Gotham.
on.
Yeah.
I thought that was amazing. That's pure flatliners. I loved that. I rhythmically that worked for me like a charm. But I mean this when I say that, like, it actually means more to me that you got to see it at this point than it does that Kevin Smith got to see it, because ever since he announced that he had it, my feed has just been on everything. It's just been like swamped with Batman Forever Schumacher cut, algorithm based, because they saw that I was searching for it
Of
because I was
course,
panicking.
yeah.
Like, did he really? And even after my podcast, when I was on his podcast, rather my podcast, Jesus, what a terrible thing I just said. His podcast that I was on, um, uh, like even after that, like I've seen so many things about it, and it's so interesting. Yours your feed came to me like sponsored by Facebook, which is the only social media that I have, which is Facebook, and unless you count YouTube, and um, uh, for some reason I chose to engage with yours, and partly because I wanted to know if he actually played the
Which
HD
cut he
cut.
showed? Yeah.
Right. But then I listened to your podcast, and that's when I started messaging you about it. And then I found out that Kevin Brackett knows you.
Yeah.
Um, so like, like it's interesting to me that yours was and like I said, so many people after Kevin's thing reached out to me wanting me to, and I just like, no, it just felt wrong and disingenuous. And I don't want to say I was worried about getting in trouble, because at this point, if I was going to have gotten in trouble, or if I am going to, you know what I mean? Like, it's already happened. You know what I mean? Like, but
The ship's already sailed
you
in a
know,
sense. Yeah.
exactly. So like, that wasn't it. It was just like, no, like, that's never what this was about. But there's something about the way your post and then your podcast presented itself that almost reminded me of why I made that Clerks 3 video. That like, no, like that's somebody who, because there are fans, and then there are people who care. You know what I mean? Like, fans, not to play God or speak with any kind of judgment, but like, fans to me are, they don't care. Fans don't care. But there are people who actually care. Like, fans, as long as Indiana Jones has the whip in his hand, it's going to be fine. You know what I mean?
Very
Fans, as
true.
long as
Very true.
Aquaman says "my man," they're gonna, whoop whoop whoop. You know, um, but like, the people who care, like, that's important to me. It's important to me that people care. So I'm glad that you care, and I'm glad that not only that you care, but that this, has a place in your story, if you will. You know what I mean? Like, your
I
journey with
mean,
Batman. That's really cool.
a massive story for me in terms of being a content creator, a podcaster, a movie critic. Call me what you will, ladies and gentlemen. But this year as a whole has been the biggest year for this brand that I've been pushing since 2014. Some people have come, some people have gone, but I've always kept my passion at the core of what this thing is. And earlier this year, Warner Brothers invited me to see The Flash at CinemaCon, and this was literally on the same level, if not bigger, in terms of my excitement, um, being able to see this cut of the movie, and especially like opening night 1995. I was a fucking fifth grader, and I saw that movie, and I loved it then. Um, but seeing a different version that is truer to that vision that Joel Schumacher had, which confirms that he understood the character, which completely disintegrates all of those shit opinions that he didn't understand the character. I mean, not that it was a matter of me saying I told you so, but it made me feel good to see it for myself and say, like, listen, he got it. He nailed it. We just didn't get to see it in the way that he intended for it to be seen. It's not his
I
fault.
think in a way, yeah, I think in a way he got it more than Burton. Burton turned Batman into his world. And I think that Schumacher fully realized Batman's. And I think that it ultimately paints a tragic portrait that the movie that Joel Schumacher is most known for, by at least people our age, is the movie where he said, "Fine, Hollywood only sees me as one big gay joke. So that's what I'll be for them this time. I'll be a big gay joke with Batman and Robin." And that's tragic in a way.
It
Um,
really is. And and
and
and, and you and I know as well that after Batman and Robin, he never had like a huge, massive success that was relative to what he did with the Batman movies after that. It wasn't that he was blacklisted, but he was viewed a certain way because of Batman and Robin, and it hurt the remainder of his career. Even if he pushed out good
Phone Booth,
movies, Phone Booth is
yeah, Phone
good.
Booth would, it had a moderate, success, and then 8 millimeter, he tried to do that thing that all artists mistakenly do, which is they try to 180 from the last thing they did, where like he did the big, goofy, silly, cartoony Batman and Robin. So I'm going to do the way too gritty, too gross 8 millimeter. And then was it number 23? That was another moderate hit. I mean, yeah, he, like you said, he worked, but you know,
Honestly, I always just felt good that he got to work with Jim again because clearly they had a
yeah,
very good relationship. But I think if
Number
anything,
23 is dope. That movie's
yeah,
cool.
no, yeah, and I mean,
Yeah.
it's underrated Carrey as well. But in terms of this, though, I mean, I think I can speak for the entire movement uh, to thank you for what you've done, unintentional or intentional. What you've done has really opened the eyes of so many people and given them something to possibly look forward to. I mean, I think that's the biggest question I've received in the comments, in emails, in messages, and YouTube comments everywhere. Where can I see it? When can I see it? And I say, listen to the episode, because in the episode we just say we don't know, because that's the truth of the matter. I mean, what the reality is that Warner Brothers owns it. I think at the Disc Father on Twitter stated that someone that he knows at Warner Brothers already said that they're not interested in doing anything with it and they don't want to spend the money on it. I mean, I'm sure you can. You're shaking your head. Yes, I think you can attest to the fact that it's going to take some money. You know, unless they're just going to
Yeah.
throw the work print on the special features as it
Look,
stands
Warner
now.
Brothers, well, they couldn't because of the music licensing, which I think would actually be a great idea. And like, I'm sure it would cost a lot less to get the music licensing than it would um, to do a new score or do it, like, and I think that the people who care enough about wanting to see it will watch the work print just fine. Um, but uh, I hope that Warner Brothers, even outside of this, the Batman Forever, I hope that every big studio in the industry starts making money by giving people things of value that they want. And I think that this is something that people want, and this has great value. It has great value in the context of Batman. It has great value in the context of nerd culture. It has great context in the value in the values it imparts in entertainment and in Joel Schumacher's legacy. And and I would hope that if Warner Brothers does something with it, that they can make lots of money off of it and learn the right lessons from it, that like, just care. That's it, just care. We went and saw Indiana Jones 5 because we cared about Indiana Jones. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
that's all you have to honor,
it's
is
as
that we
simple as
care.
that, for
And
real.
yeah, yeah, it really is. And like, you know um you don't have to subvert it. You don't have to do you don't have to challenge it, which is something that I feel like a lot of modern movies do. Like, that's one of the reasons I really didn't like the Batman. I thought that the Batman was trying to challenge the way that a movie is made like that. You know what I mean? Like, it felt like they made it 3 hours for the sake of making it 3 hours. It felt like they made the Riddler's costume, like a fucking incel, like, get up, because they were challenging the very idea of it. You know what I mean? I still stand by that. I think that Eddie Murphy should have played the Riddler. Like, that's the Riddler I want to see. I want to see somebody who's like so brilliant that like in the eyes, that like that's scary, and the fact that they're funny and presentable too. Like, Eddie Murphy, I think, would be like the most incredible. I also think that Vincent Gallo would make the best Joker, like, ever.
Well, I mean, I mean, Eddie Murphy almost became Robin in Batman '89. So,
Yeah, and so did Marlon Wayans.
well, he was
And
Marlon Wayans was paid $300,000 for playing Robin in Batman Returns, and he didn't shoot a fucking single scene.
lucky him.
Interestingly enough, yeah, well, that character would not have
I do.
meshed in that world at all in terms of
No,
there's no
because
room for a
Schumacher.
Robin in that world. But
Yeah, well, because Burton made a Tim Burton movie and Joel Schumacher tried to make a Batman movie. And I actually, what is it? The Brave and the Bold is getting
yes,
made
Andy
now, right? Isn't that
Muschietti
the
is
next Batman?
well. I
I'm
feel
so
bad. I
glad.
feel bad for both of them. Actually, I've been in contact with Barbara for Andy's sister, who's the producer on The Flash and it and all of his projects. I felt so terrible for her because I was a huge advocate for The Flash, and a few weeks after it came out, we're friends on Instagram or whatever, and she saw my post, which was, I'll always support this movie because I'll always support the movies I love, no matter what anyone says about them. And she was just like,
Yeah.
thank you. It's been very rough, people hating on a movie before they even see it. Unfortunately, that's the culture we live in, which is a totally different podcast. We could talk like hours and hours about that. But I'm excited for Andy. I think he understands the character very, very well. I think he'll bring an exciting
Mhm.
take on the character. And also it'll be literally, think about this logically. We've had, next year it'll be 35 years since Batman 89, right? So that means we've only seen Robin in 2 movies in that 35 years of Batman being in how many movies. So and knowing Robin, he's such an important part of that character in that story. And depending on which version of the comics you look at, so it'll be interesting and exciting to see what they do. I know they've done Robin in the DC shows and stuff like Titans and all that, but again, I don't.
Yeah,
I'm with you on that too. I have not watched it.
yeah.
I just know that people that listen to the show enjoy it and stuff. But it'll be exciting to see. Finally another take on that. It'll be just something to look forward to for sure. But as we're wrapping this thing up, I think we nailed it pretty hard. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for listening to this follow-up. I couldn't be more thankful and appreciative to you, Joe, for coming on. And not only that, but for reaching out, because it was like you legitimately were just asking a simple question like, hey, what version did you see? And somehow, I'm just seriously thankful that the movie and our social media presence connected to it got you involved in a sense where you could see it and then we could chat and then bring you on. I know it's a hot topic right now, and you fleshed out pretty much everything I want to know except for who gave it to you. But I'm not going to ask that, because I think some things are better left unsaid that are better left as legend. And I think that's exciting in Hollywood lore, if you will. Like there's always going to be that question, where did it come from? But
I also love too how everybody thinks that Kevin was given it by Warner Brothers. I've seen that where like he's actually like they're just putting feelers out there to see if they actually can do it.
We didn't know. Yeah,
No.
we didn't know. It was like people. I mean, it would make sense in the long run if you were going to try to get that cut out there to get interest, that you would give it to that guy, right? But
sure.
But
I'm the biggest Hollywood conspiracy theorist you'll ever meet. Like they're all evil, they're all interconnected. You have no idea. But like at the end of the day, like no, it was just I'm just an idiot. I don't know.
The reality of the matter is you just spoke your mind about one of his movies, and you went to his event, and you like you said, extended the olive branch. And
I will say, to close it up from my end, that night when I was on Kevin's podcast and we, and he told everybody I was the one who gave it to him. I said to Mark, I was like, oh shit, after this, everybody's going to come up to me asking me to see it. And we got, swamped by a bunch of people. One person asked if they could see it. Everyone else was telling me how much they liked what I said about Clerks 3 and how much it meant to them that somebody finally told Kevin to stop talking ill of himself.
Wow.
So,
well, that's a huge positive. Positive.
I hope that his next movie is great. So, yeah, I really do. I wish the best for everybody. So that's it.
Yeah. Well,
and also
again.
if I can shamelessly plug my own work.
Oh no, of course. As is customary on the end of every one of our shows, I was about to throw it to you where our audience can find you, what your projects are, and what you're doing.
You can find me on BlueMeansPregnantFilms.com, BlueMeansPregnantFilms.com, and we have a Blue Means Pregnant Facebook page. We also have our last movie, Natasha Hall, is available on Amazon to buy or rent. It's not on like Prime, but you can buy or rent it on Amazon. It's got Dwayne Whitaker in it, the pawn shop rapist from Pulp Fiction. It's got Corinne Bohr, my favorite actress.
That's pretty amazing though, being able to work with your favorite fucking actress, right?
Yeah, I got to work with a lot. It's got Ron Thompson, and it's got a few people. A secret Easter egg cameo in there, and we have a sequel to Natasha Hall coming out hopefully later this year called Suffrage, and we got Dan Roebuck and Eric Roberts in that one. So my wife is the title character Natasha Hall, and that's my 14th and 15th movie. I've made 15 features, and all the ones that I've made that never got like official releases, you can see on our website on BlueMeansPregnantFilms.com.
Amazing. And do you guys have anywhere on social media where you would like, fans and listeners to come check you out or come say hi or anything? Or are you like kind of like, nah, I don't.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's all just, Blue Means Pregnant, like I said, has a Facebook page. And then there's also my YouTube page is Blue Means Pregnant Films. So like, and there's a contact thing on the website, and you can contact me through Facebook. I love interacting with people and growing the net of artists and supporting in any way I can. Like I've been doing this. I made my first feature in 2005. So I've been doing this now since Batman Begins came out. I was like,
wild.
It's time to.
You're like, I saw that Batman Begins movie. I'm gonna make my whole life.
I went, uh-oh.
about making a better movie than that. But thanks again, seriously, Joe. I mean, it means so much to myself, and not just myself, but our listeners that are super interested in hearing about how this all went down, as well as your own story. And that's always the most interesting thing to us in terms of loving movies, loving filmmakers, having them tell their stories. I had a blast with you. If this is your first time listening to the show, you can find Epic Film Guys on every podcast platform and on social media at Epic Film Guys, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok now, because I was forced to do it. I know. I saw your face. I really didn't want to do it, but you know what? It's whatever. Who gives a shit? My 19-year-old daughter.
In my life, I've seen one TikTok.
She's like, you should do it. She's like, do it. And I'm like, okay, fine. But also, if you like what you're hearing, we beg you, seriously. Spotify, it's easy. Just leave us a star review. You don't have to say anything. iTunes, you can say we suck. I don't even give a shit. Just leave us 5 stars. It helps us reach more awesome fans like yourselves. And with our last episode, in regards to the Schumacher cut of Batman Forever, we're literally at the highest I think we've ever been on the iTunes charts ever.
Great.
We're in like the top 10 of all time. So
yeah,
I mean, doing this for as long as we've been doing it, I'm actually legitimately shocked that there's that many of you interested in this. So again, Joe, we have you to thank for that inadvertently, but thank you so much.
Don't tell Warner Bros.
Don't tell Warner Bros. You know what? They invited me to CinemaCon, but I doubt they pay attention to anything else I fucking do. I don't know. Who knows?
Well, Kevin, I mean, they invited him to the Flash premiere after he said he had it. So, like, I didn't show it to anybody. He did. No, but like, I think it's fine. I love Warner Brothers.
I love them too.
They make their advice.
I mean, minus what the guy in there making decisions right now is doing, which I won't speak on that. But I really enjoyed that documentary series on Max about the history of Warner Brothers. That was fantastic. But until next time, as always, we like to ask you to keep it creepy, and we'll see you at the movies.